All honors most certainly due to the Most High, the God of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and peace to you in the name of Jesus. This is your brother Elisha Israel of the House of the Faith, and I count it truly a blessing each and every time that I can come before you to preach the Word of God. And never ever do I count it as a light thing to do so. Just a little bit about the Household of Faith. We meet every Sabbath at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at Indiana University Northwest Library Conference Center Room LC 105, 3400 Broadway, Gary, Indiana. Again, that's the Household of Faith. We meet every Sabbath at Indiana University Northwest Library Conference Center Room LC 105 and 3400 Broadway, Gary, Indiana is the address. So if you'd like to hear the uncut, unadulterated Word of God, we invite you to come out and worship with us. You can also catch our live stream. We live stream our sermons, or our services, on israelteach.org. Just go to www.israelteach. That's one word, ISRAELTEACH.org. Okay. You can also catch our radio broadcast on WLTH 1370 AM, the region's choice, every Sunday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Okay. You can also live stream those sermons on the internet. Just go to our website and you can just click on the radio live button and it'll take you to the link directly at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time every Sunday. Excuse me. All right, brothers and sisters, and with that, I want to get into today's topic, and really, it's twofold. One thing I want to talk about in the wake of all these shootings in this killing, I want to talk about, just have a basic conversation about police brutality and racism, and then I want to deal with the spiritual dynamic or dimension to the problem. In the wake of these shootings, you see a lot of propaganda on television, and you see a lot of politicized rhetoric and a lot of racist rhetoric. And for our people, you see a lot of confusion. Because really you have to ask yourself the question, what is the problem, right? So you had two shootings back to back, one in Louisiana in Baton Rouge, one in Minnesota, where they seem to be police officers basically murdering people on video. These aren't the only two. This is a long stream of murders of black people, abuse of black people who were unarmed. Now the one was armed, but it seemed, at least according to the video, that there was no need to take the action that was taken, which was to end his life. Okay. Now, some people, you hear a lot, like I hear just being honest, the racist former mayor say, well, it's about, police feel they have a target on their back. Well, they very well may feel that way, but rest assured, black people in America definitely feel that way, because you'd be hard pressed, particularly, even I've seen women getting beat up by the police, beaten up on the side of the road, body slamming little girls at pool parties. You'd be hard pressed to find a black male in this country that has not had some horrendous encounter with police. That's just the facts of the matter, me myself included. That's just the facts of the matter. Okay. And some, but some want to argue, like I said, they want to make the issue something it's not, and say, well, what about black on black violence? Again, our people are confused. Understand, first of all, we are people who don't know who we are as a people. Okay. And therefore, and also in addition to that, we have been socially conditioned to hate ourselves and have been taught that we have been less than, and our terrible treatment has been justified because we have been told that we are less than. Nevertheless, nobody's coming to save us, right? So when we see, because we have so much internalized self-hatred because of the system of racism and white supremacy, what do you have? You have a lot of hatred. We hate each other. We hate because we hate ourselves. Psychologically, we're in a bad way. Spiritually, we're in a bad way, which is what I'm going to deal with, which is the root of the problem later. But so you have a lot of black on black violence. You have a lot of poverty, which when you have a lot of poverty, that's what impoverished people tend to do. Okay. So, but I'm not justifying that, because that's a problem we need to deal with. But that's not the case when it comes to this police brutality. Those two issues, black on black violence and the police killings of unarmed black folks, those are two separate issues and they're not analogous. They're not analogous because when black people kill black people, they go to jail. Okay? Again, I'm gonna say that again. When black people kill black people, the one who's doing the killing, the tried, prosecuted, found guilty, they go to jail. But when police officers are shooting unarmed black people on video, nobody's going to jail. Standing on top of the car, just firing off rounds into the car, killing a man and a woman. A man, you see images of a man running, and police shoot him in the back and then drop a taser next to him. You got a man, he wasn't killed, but was it in Michigan? He's profiled, pulled over, beaten to an inch of his life, then drugs planted on him on video. Like all this stuff is going on. The women in that were raped by the police officers, right? So all these things are going on, and you don't see a lot of prison time. You don't see a lot of convictions. How did the man get choked out on camera? Where are the convictions? How did the man look like his leg was broke before you threw him in the car? But why'd you pick him up in the first place? What law did he break in the first place? See, that the problem is that there are no convictions when it comes to this police brutality. And this has been an ongoing thing. This is nothing new. This has been an ongoing thing. It's just that now it's on camera. It's on video. So now you can see it and people can understand, like, man, this is what's happening. And still nobody goes to jail. No convictions, no prison. This is the problem. Now, when you have some police officers get killed, now everybody's up in arms. Now everybody's saying, whoa, wait a minute. Now you have the president on TV talking about it's a travesty. And it is tragic. Anytime people die in that manner, that is a tragedy. But we have to look at the problem for what it is. And that's one thing that America has never done. America has never told the truth about its origin. It has never told the truth about what is done to black people in this country. Yeah, slavery was a sidebar, but it's not as if slavery ended. It's not as if oppression ended. It's not as if those things have just gone away and now we are all having a kumbaya moment. There's never been a oneness in this country. Let's tell the truth about the role of the police in black and even black and brown communities that are impoverished or even working class. Amongst us, the police have served to occupy these areas, not to protect these areas for the most part. They've served to occupy. They've served to lock in. They serve to fill quotas. That's a lot of what's going on. Because you can't say that's not the case when black, white, Latinos buy, sell, and use drugs at the same rate. Some estimates show that whites sell and use drugs at a higher rate, but who goes to jail for the distribution and the use of drugs? See, when heroin becomes, see, crack didn't become a problem after the CIA flooded it into the black communities in South Central, rural communities, to fund the Contras in that war. When they did that, it wasn't a big deal. Now black people killing each other because you got a way to make money. You got people addicted. And now people getting killed. Man, they just showing it as if they didn't have a hand in it. But when that stuff spread into the white suburbs, Then it became a problem. Just like now, heroin is a serious problem in a lot of white areas, of affluent white areas. And how are they handling it? With us, it was mass incarceration. With us, it was 3 strikes you're out. With us, it was build the prisons. But with them, it's we need to handle this with health care. We need to handle this as an addiction, which is how you should handle it in the first place. Because it is an addiction. It is a health problem. Somebody's hooked on some kind of narcotic. But see, there's no equal treatment. And there has never been equal treatment. It's just like, and that's why, like now, you know, the election time comes, and what do we think? We're looking at Trump, who has all this undertone of racial rhetoric, racially charged rhetoric, but then you had a record of the Clintons, who called your children super predators, who need to be brought to heel, who would go in a black church or do the nay or talk about hot sauce, and she got your vote and has delivered nothing. Who the people, her husband was largely, you know, when you look at the program of mass incarceration of black bodies, that was done under Democrats. It was put forth, the idea, the notion was put forth during the Nixon era and even Reagan, but when it was implemented, you saw that in the 90s with Clinton. And now those are your choices. And people, see, we've always had that problem. You can even go back to the Revolutionary War, where we were trying to wrestle with the idea of a Declaration of Independence, even though we were enslaved in the colonies, and went and fought for this country. And what happened? Slavery just flourished. Just continue to flourish. Constitution, hey, we're gonna settle that. We still gonna have slavery. South said it's a deal. That's the history of America. Program after program after program. And I'm telling you right now, what you're feeling is the backlash. There's always a backlash and every time there's some semblance of progress when it comes to our people. After slavery, what did you have? Jim Crow. At the end of slavery, you had 100 years of Jim Crow. After the Civil Rights Movement, what did you have? Mass incarceration. After the election of President Barack Obama, which was the biggest symbol of equality, which the country is no longer, has never been post-racial, but yet what are you feeling that? A backlash. Okay. But again, this is the history of the country. It's built on genocide and slavery. It can't be nothing else. And our problem is that we have never been a part of it. Yes, we built it. Yes, we made all types of contributions. Yes, we even identify with it as being American, but we have really never been Americans. We have been second-class citizens. Even though we've shared blood, like I said, even during the time of the Revolutionary War, Crispus Attucks was the first to shed blood for the cause of this country, or this nation growing into what it is. We laid the economic foundation and did not benefit, did not prosper as one should. And now we get the scraps of a nation that was built on free labor, that has become a superpower and wealthy. We get the scraps of that wealth. But when you really look at it, we still in a terrible state. So, and when you look at our communities, when you look at the police officers, this is a serious problem. Because when you look at what they've done, again, they are there to occupy these areas. And what they're doing, these police killings, every 24 hours, a black man is shot by the police. That's not something that's going to be handled through sensitivity training. That's not something that's going to be handled through body cams. Because it's on video and they're shooting people and still getting off. acquittals. That's not, because that's not what it's about. Your existence is the problem and has always been the problem. And, you know, it's not your solution. It's not like I heard this false prophet say they had this ridiculous show, the preachers, ridiculous show, right? One of the false prophets on that show talked about how he got racially profiled, seemed to be racially profiled in his own neighborhood. He lived in an affluent neighborhood, and the cops pulled up on him when he came into his driveway, and only his wife coming out of the house yelling, "He lives here, he lives here." He doesn't know what would have happened. And he says, "You know what I did? I went down to the police station, I introduced myself, and I brought them gifts." I'm telling you, that's not the solution. When you have a 2006 report coming out saying that, listen, police departments across the country have been infiltrated by white supremacist groups. That's understand. This country is, racism is interwoven into the fabric of the country. It's interwoven into the fabric of the country. And as I've been stating, things are just going to get worse. Things are just going to get worse. And if you don't know why the things are the way that they are, you come up with all these solutions, or you can be hoodwinked and bamboozled. Because what do you see? Out of this derives what? All of it, everything, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, Black. Have you ever looked at the platform of Black Lives Matter? Have you ever looked at the leadership of Black Lives Matter? Who are these people? Who are these people? Who elected them leaders? And then look at the agenda. The agenda is homosexual. The agenda is homosexual. I heard on that same show I was mentioning earlier, another false prophet said, you know, one thing about this is the first time that a movement has not been led by the clergy. The civil rights movement not been led by the clergy. And I'm thinking to myself, I said, that is true. That's why I say it to be more militant. But one thing about it, the Lord never told you. The Lord never told you, because these people are supposed to know God, right? He never told you that nonviolence and that civil disobedience and that voting and that forced integration would equate to your freedom. He never told you that. But that was the program that was put forth, and that's the program that has continued to be perpetuated. Right? But he never told you that. He told you, if my people are called by my name, will humble themselves and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, forgive their sins, and heal their land. He told you to repent from sin and turn back to him as a people. That's what he told you the solution was. The solution is not to yell Black Lives Matter. The solution is not to lay down in the street to get arrested. That's not the solution. The solution is not to vote. Who are you voting for? Who are you voting for? When these people are already selected prior. And black people understand when you're voting I'm talking local elections, I'm not talking about the presidency. That's bought and paid for, but that's already selected. But these politicians are already bought and sold, and therefore the agenda is given to them by the people. Black people don't pay for politicians. That's why politicians never do what they say, or never serve our, or rarely serve our interests, even though they are of our color. But that's beside the point, because again, like I stated, if you don't understand the spiritual dimension to the problem, you can't understand anything, and you'll fall for these false narratives that are on CNN and MSNBC, and the false narratives that are on the town hall meetings, right? And that's what's shown. But in reality, on the ground, in the streets, like in Tulsa, when they shot the man, they caught him in a sting. They shot him. Man said he thought it was his officer. Said, "Oh, I thought it was my taser." He shot him with his firearm, and as he lay there dying, taking his last breath, he said, "I can't breathe." And you know what the officer told him? He said, "F your breath." That's what the officer told him. So, you know, this is not an indictment against all officers, but I will say this. This is to say that there are too few who speak out about the illegality that goes on with police officers. Too few say anything. So all this, not all cops are bad. I'm not saying that at all, but wait a minute. You have too many that are silent when we know things are going on. See, you don't see on some of those instances I mentioned, when the cop was planting the crack, or planting the drugs on the end, trying to plant the drugs, and it was caught on video. Another cop was there. He talking to him and laughing about it. When the man was running, I think he had some child support stuff going on. I don't know, but he's running and the cop shoots him in the back, drops the taser. Here come another cop. You ain't see that? What in Baltimore? You didn't see that? All y'all saw that happen. Eric Garner got choked out. So, but what is the problem, brothers and sisters? The problem at the root of it is not that we need to vote. It's not that we need police training. Because they are just, they just one faction of a larger entity. And ultimately, brothers and sisters, the problem is a spiritual one. The problem is a spiritual one. The problem is that we don't know who we are. I want to go to Deuteronomy 32. Because we study, man, we look up, we want to have conversations. And then, people talk about praying, but who are you praying to? And what are you praying for? And what are you doing along with your prayer? See, when Daniel was in captivity, he acknowledged the sins of his people. He acknowledged the sins of his people. See, that's what was told to do. That's what we were instructed to do. Through the scriptures. But I was going to read this here. That was something that would happen to the children of Israel. It says, this is Deuteronomy 32:26. It said, I said I would scatter them into corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. Like I said earlier, we don't know who we are as a people. And because we don't know who we are as a people, the remembrance of us has ceased from amongst men. What is an African American? You naming yourself after 2 continents. What does that mean? Nobody does that. That's because we don't know who we are. We just think we African. Africans call us the N-word. See, they weren't just selling themselves, they were selling other people. Who are these other people? They were the Israelites that had went into Africa, even into the interior of Africa after being run out of Israel by the Romans. And what happened to them? The transatlantic slave trade. Let me read that to you. I'm not going to read all of Deuteronomy 28. But if you read Deuteronomy 28, you have to ask yourself the question, who are these people? Who is this talking about? Deuteronomy 28 and verse 15. It reads, but if it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So it said, if you don't obey God, you're going to be cursed by God. See, we've been told, socially conditioned to believe that we are less than people. I've used this Bible to say, see, Ham is cursed. You Ham, you are the Africans, no, that's false. That's false. You cursed in your skin, according to the Talmud. First of all, blackness is not a curse. That's a blessing. That's the dominant genes. I'm not saying that everybody else is inferior, but I'm saying it certainly is not a curse to be black. To have melanin, that's certainly not a curse. That is a blessing. But it said, cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy score. Everywhere you go, you're going to be cursed. Economically, you're going to be cursed. Now, this is verse, I'm going to skip down. It says something here. It says in verse 30, thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof. So what does he mean? You're going to have a betrothed wife. You're going to have a wife, and another man going to sleep with her. That happened wholesale in slavery. Even from the time of the boat, getting on that boat on those plantations where that so-called master would come into them slave quarters and have his way with men's wives. Okay? And he said, you're going to build a house, but you're not going to dwell in. Who built the big house on the plantations? Slaves. Who built the country? Slave. It was built on backs of slave labor. Then it says, thou shalt plant a vineyard and shall not gather the grapes thereof. Again, we did all the agricultural work and did not benefit. Verse 32, thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. You're going to be sold into slavery. Your children are going to be sold into slavery. Verse 41, thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. Who is this talking about? See, this can't be talking about the people who claim to be Jews today. This didn't happen to them. But, it's on record what happened to us. Why? Let's find out why these curses came upon us. Verse 45, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. So he said, you're going to be cursed, and you're going to be destroyed because you were disobedient to the commandments. We were given the law, statutes, the commandments of God. I'm going to hold your finger here, and we want to read something in Amos. We want to read something in Amos. This is Amos 3 and verse 1. It says, hear this word that the Lord has spoken against you, O children of Israel. But we know the ones who said, I'm going to make the remembrance of you to cease from among men. It says, against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth, therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. We've been destroyed as a people. But he said, you are the only ones that I've known. That's why Paul said, what advantage doth have the Jew, much chiefly in every way, for unto them are committed the oracles of God. The law, statutes, the commandments, the judgment, what they call the Torah, that was given to Israel and Israel alone. He said, only you have I known of all the nations of the earth. But he said, therefore, I'm going to punish you for all your iniquities because you knew better. You knew better. Let's go to, let's still hold our place in Deuteronomy 28 and go to Genesis. Genesis 15, because only you have I known. This is Genesis 15. And he said, I brought you out of Egypt. Genesis 15. And we're going to read verse, we'll read verse 1. It says, and these things, the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. And he tells Abram, whose name was changed to Abraham, he says in verse 13, and he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. So the first slavery was in Egypt. And they were in it for 400 years. Okay? 400 years. So it says, and also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. And that's how Israel did come out with great substance. When you line up the true timeline, you can find that Israel was indeed in Egypt. And they did, and there was an exodus. Okay? It says, now shalt go to thy fathers in peace, thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the fourth generation, they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And that's the land that they were going to go into, the land of Canaan. Okay? The land of Canaan. And it said, but their iniquity had not reached its full. I'm telling you right now, America is on its way down. You don't see that? Internally, just like every other empire, the cup of iniquity. You cannot believe that this country, with all the blood on its hands, all the stuff not just here but around the globe, with all the things that are going on internally, we'll say that a man can marry a man and a woman can marry a woman. That's law. With this the total sexual debauchery, the ungodly behavior, wholesale. You cannot possibly think that this country is going to continue to prosper. That's not how things work. That's not how things work. There's a reason why you don't see America in biblical prophecy, because towards the end, the last days that we in right now, America is removed from the scene. I'm not saying it's totally destroyed. What I'm saying though is that it certainly is not prominent as it once was. Just as fast as it came to prominence is as fast as it'll fall. Internally, you see that. Economically, you see that. You see that going on right now. Economically, it's already fallen. It's just holding on by a string, if you will. But so we were told here about his people, about his seed going into slavery for 400 years. And then it said he's going to bring them out. But then again, when we read in Amos again, when we read in Amos, what we just read in 3, it says, hear this word that the Lord has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt. Okay, again, that was his first bondage, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth, therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. And that punishment continued. Every time we got our line, we go into captivity until there was a final captivity. When Jesus wept over Jerusalem, he said, if only thou had known thy visitation. All right. But he prophesied of the ransacking of Jerusalem. That was basically historically, as a people, that was the end. Around 70 AD, that was the end. Who wasn't crucified and hanged on the tree at that time? Hey, they went into or sold into slavery at that time, went into the interior of Africa and dwelt among the peoples there, set up communities there. And then when the transatlantic slave trade got to going, when the Portuguese came in there and other people came in there from Europe, hey, you had more wars, and these were the people who were more susceptible, and these were the people who were sold. These were mainly the people that were sold into slavery. It's not a coincidence that when you look at the so-called tribal breakdowns of who was sold, it's not a coincidence that many of these peoples claim to be or have claims that they were Hebrews. It's not a coincidence that you have Hebrew communities all throughout Africa. Okay, and this is not a coincidence either. Let's go back to Deuteronomy 28. And I want to read verse 64. It says, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods which neither thou nor thy father have known, even wood and stone. And that's what we're doing right now, worshiping these false gods. And this false worship that is perpetuated by these false prophets is the problem. See, they continue our problem. He talked about how the clergy, the first time the clergy went in charge of or at the forefront of the civil rights movement. Understand, the movement we need to be making, the movement we need to be making is back to our God. Not the God of this false Europeanized Christianity, but the God, the true and living God of Israel. That's who we need to get back to. So it says, and among these nations shalt thou find no ease. That's just how we are right now. We have no ease. We have no peace. It says, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest, but the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a sorrow of mind to think that, man, it doesn't matter if I keep the law or not. The police will still shoot me. When you think about that man who in Minnesota, it seemed, according to the video, that he was following the law. And I don't know how, I don't know if that was his fiance. I believe it was his fiance or the woman he was with. I don't know, man, she had the wherewithal to actually live stream it. Because apparently, from what I've heard, they took her phone. But the man even though they're looking in his record, right, trying to find something. From what I've heard, it's basically squeaky clean besides some parking tickets. So, you know, that's what happens when black people get killed and are victimized. They get victimized again in the media, showing things that have nothing to do with the actual event. So, like, I want to see, so with these police officers that were killed, and again, I'm not justifying that at all, but it would only be fair that you look into their record just like as victims, as you looked into the records of these people who were unjustly killed. But they're not going to do that. They're going to make them as if they are martyrs. They're going to put them above the many black folks that have been laid out in the street like roadkill by these rogue police. And a lot of these police departments have been infiltrated by who? White supremacists. That's the fact. FBI came out with that report again in 2006. But so it says in verse 66, and thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life. Again, none assurance. What do you tell your young boys that have to go out here? You know, I'm telling you, like the young man in New York, they said, hey, you stole a backpack. No evidence, none. Put him in jail. They said, plead guilty. He refused to plead guilty. He was in Rikers. And don't know what happened to him in Rikers, but he came out. You know what he did? He committed suicide. See, that's the kind of thing that happens. Or like the many men that have been committed suicide in the back of a police car, handcuffed. Or the black sites that they got in places like Chicago, where they would take you, that's not the station, but they would take you to some building, no-name building, and beat you to the end of your life. Or like what Berg was doing in Chicago. He was beating black men, torturing them with, putting electrodes to their testicles and beating them with phone books and pipes and doing all these things, forcing confessions out of people. This is nothing new. This is nothing new. But see, that's our experience. And see, we don't, spiritually, we can't get it together to understand that, man, ask the question, why is God allowing this to happen to us? We just want to say, well, you got to forgive the people who did it. Like the man went in the church and shot all those people. The man said, the young boy, I think he looked like a young boy. I guess he was grown. Standing there looking at him through a video, and they just said, I forgive you. Shot my mother, shot my aunt, shot this person, shot that person. I forgive. Hold on. He didn't even ask for forgiveness. See, but that's Christianity. I'm talking about the Christianity that they have given us. You be passive, you be a victim, you be a doormat, you be a target for bullets, and then don't ever be violent. Hold on. We need to ask ourselves the question, wait a minute. We doing all this praying. We got all these false prophets. We got all these churches around here. Is God pleased with us? How could he be pleased with us when we have turned our back on him? Our iniquity has separated us from our God, and we need to turn back to our God in spirit and in truth. This is verse 66. It says, and thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life. In the morning thou shalt say, with God or with even, and at even thou shalt say, with God or with morning. Whatever time it is, we're going to have a problem. It says, for the fear of thine heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. Our despair is nothing new. It's coming to an end, though. But it's nothing new. And I'm telling you, before we get to that end, you're going to have darker times coming for us as a people. Verse 68, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. Why Egypt? Because like I read in Genesis 15, he said, I'm going to bring your seed into a land, and they're going to serve for 400 years. Egypt represented the house of bondage. Let me read this to you. Exodus 20, real quick. You can hold your fingers. I'm going to finish Deuteronomy 28. But when we read Exodus 20, he describes Egypt as something. This is where you read the Ten Commandments. Exodus 21, it says, and God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Bondage is captivity or slavery. See, it was almost synonymous with slavery because it was our first captivity. So it says in verse 68, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, or with, he could have said bondage. But he said something about this. He said, I'm going to bring you into Egypt again with ships. He's talking slave ships, brothers and sisters. You have to ask yourself the question, when is it on record that the people who call themselves Israel today, or the Jew today, went into slavery by way of slave ships? They will lie to you and say that's time of future. But we've already experienced it. That's why you read in Revelation. I know that works in that. I know that works in our poverty without works. And I know the blasphemy of them would say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. So it says in verse 68 again, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. That's bondage again with slave ships. They tight packed us on ships, sent us to the Caribbean, to the Americas. They seasoned us there in the Caribbean, and brought us to the Americas and worked us. It says, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And we haven't been back. It says, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So what do you mean you sold to your enemies and bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you? We were sold on auction blocks. When you look at the stock market, the New York Stock Exchange, we were stopped initially. Sold all throughout New York, all throughout. Only, people try to act like the North was so much more progressive. What the North was a cold climate that didn't have the need for the slave labor because of the agricultural output. Couldn't match what was going on in the South. You're just as racist in the North as you are in the South. So it says, again, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. What does it mean, no man shall buy you? How you bought and how you sold but not purchased or not bought? Meaning you're not going to be redeemed. See, even though we don't wear shackles right now, we still are in the land of captivity. If you think about what happened when we were taken into Babylonian captivity, and then eventually were allowed to go back during the edicts of Cyrus, okay? When the Medes and the Persians took over. Understand, up until that time, even though they weren't in bondage, in shackles, they were still in captivity. You still in captivity, you've never been home. You still in captivity if you've never been home. And people say, well, go back to Africa. First of all, you weren't even the third. You were with the third or fourth people. You had the indigenous here. You had Africans that came here before any European set foot here. You stole the land, and then you had other people work the land. The indigenous people couldn't do it. They would die first. The Europeans couldn't do it. Then the indigenous people couldn't do it. Then you brought some black folks over here to do it. So don't tell me about sending somebody back if you're not gonna give us what you owe, and you don't have enough money to pay what you owe. You'd have to give up the whole country. But it says no man's gonna buy you. Again, all these people that have emerged out of our people, great men and women, could not redeem us out of this situation. Because even, man, we so crazy, we think we're Americans. You might have citizenship, but it certainly is a second-class citizenship. Anytime you have to have a people who continue to have a Civil Rights Act, a Voting Rights Act, have to have that renewed, you have a second-class citizenship. Anytime you got to die to sit next to somebody, on the same toilet with somebody, or to have a cup of coffee with somebody, or to sit in the front of a bus with somebody, or to go to the same schools with somebody, that's second-class citizenship. Anytime you're arrested disproportionately, Anytime you stop and frisk because the police have a policy of racially profiling you, that's second-class citizenship. You mass incarcerated, that's anytime you have to make the point that Black lives matter, then because you have to say that because you have so many Black people getting killed in the street, then they say, hey, well, all lives matter. Nobody's first of all, I'm not a proponent of Black Lives Matter. Let me get that out the way now. But what the slogan is saying, that hey, Black life does matter, because it would seem as if it didn't. Going back to that original, well, not the original problem, but the problem I started out with was what? People killing, these police officers killing Black men and Black people and not going to jail. See, if you just look at that, if you just look at our economic situation, if you don't look at the spiritual dimension to the problem, you don't understand the problem. And if you don't understand the problem, you're like a doctor who could only offer ointment, who could only offer these meds that deal with the symptoms and not deal with the disease. The disease, or the root of the problem, again, is that we need to acknowledge our iniquity, not our inferiority. We definitely not inferior. Our mere existence and survival through all this shows that. But we need to acknowledge our disconnect with God and repair that, and God will deliver us. Not saying that we don't do anything in the process, because even, for example, when they went to that Red Sea, they had to walk through that. That took faith. You had Pharaoh behind you, and you had to walk through walls of water. That took faith. You had to do different things. You had to go take the land. You had to do different things. So what I'm saying is that the first thing we need to do, though, is acknowledge our iniquity. Acknowledge that we've sinned against God as a people and turn from his law, statutes, and commandments, and do away with this false religion. Do away with this false form of Christianity. Do away with this Islam that many of our people are dealing with. We need to do away with that. And with that, brothers and sisters, I'm going to pick it up and continue. Israel only acknowledge thine iniquity when I see you, Lord willing, on Wednesday.